Oi, pessoal, eu sou a Carol Prolo e esse é o Niñas, seu podcast semanal sobre a crise do clima e o clima da crise. Hoje é quinta-feira, dia 21 de agosto, e eu estou fazendo aqui essa introdução do podcast sozinha, porque a Natalie está em Vanuatu, que é um desses países, ilha do Pacífico, ameaçados pelo aumento do nível do mar em virtude da crise climática. E tá tudo bem com ela lá, mas como acontece muito com esse local, essa região, instabilidade de conexão da internet e de fornecimento de energia é uma realidade e a Natalie não conseguiu participar por esses probleminhas técnicos. Mas a verdade é que esse é um episódio muito especial. Eu estou fazendo essa introdução hoje na quinta-feira, dia 21, mas a verdade é que a gente fez essa conversa, que vai ser entrevista desse episódio, na semana passada, e foi com um nome fundamental na defesa da causa da mudança do clima, que vocês acho que conhecem muito bem, o vice-presidente dos Estados Unidos, Gore, que veio ao Brasil e abriu um espaço na agenda dele para um encontro com as Niñas no Rio de Janeiro. Vocês podem imaginar como essa conversa foi incrível, porque Gore quase que dispensa apresentações. Mas para quem não se lembra, além de ex-vice-presidente americano, o Gore foi idealizador do filme Uma Verdade Inconveniente, lá de 2006, quase 20 anos atrás, que foi um marco, porque abriu para o mainstream da cultura pop, da política e do debate público esse tema que ainda era para poucos. E, na sequência, em 2007, ele recebeu o Prêmio Nobel da Paz, justamente por esse trabalho de mobilização contra a crise climática. E desde então ele vem sendo uma das principais lideranças globais no assunto, escreve livros, dá palestras, faz outros documentários como este, que é o grande desafio do nosso tempo, a emergência climática. E ele esteve no Brasil para promover um encontro do seu Climate Reality Project, que é uma iniciativa que promove treinamentos, capacitação, educação e mobilização no tema de mudança do clima pelo mundo inteiro. Aqui no Brasil tem uma unidade do Climate Reality, inclusive, que é sediada no Rio de Janeiro, liderada pela querida Renata Moraes e em parceria com o Centro Brasil no Clima, também do Rio de Janeiro, também do querido amigo Guilherme Sirquis. Eu tenho uma história pessoal com esse treinamento, porque eu participei do primeiro que houve no Brasil há 10 anos atrás, em 2014. Então, essa entrevista tem um gostinho muito especial para mim, que foi realmente muito marcante na minha trajetória e acho que foi marcante para a formação até dessa comunidade que hoje a gente tem no Brasil em torno da agenda climática. Saiu muita gente daquele encontro lá e acho que realmente mostra a força dessas lideranças em trazer aí esses espaços e essa mobilização para que a gente possa desenvolver as soluções e juntos traçarmos esse caminho aí para enfrentar a crise do clima. Então é isso. Hoje esse é um episódio diferente, é mais curto, é mais fora do nosso padrão aqui, mas acho que mais intenso e talvez especial. Então, espero que vocês gostem. Antes de começar a entrevista, um aviso. Para quem acompanha as Niñas só em áudio, essa entrevista foi gravada em inglês, mas o vídeo está disponível com legendas em português. Então, sem mais delongas, com vocês, Mr. Gore.
Hi, I'm Natalie Unterstell.
And I'm Caroline Prolo.
And this is Las Niñas, your podcast on the climate crisis and the climate of the crisis. And this is a very special episode because we have with us here in Rio de Janeiro today, Mr. Gore. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much, Natalie, Caroline. It's a pleasure to be on your blog. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Well, without further ado, I think we should get to the questions and dialogue.
Get to work. So, Mr. Gore, the numbers don't lie. The transition is happening, and even perhaps faster than we can grasp, we can really understand. If we accelerate from here, what does the future look like? What will happen if we actually get this right?
Well, I'm optimistic that we will. The transition is definitely happening, and it's happening faster than many people thought was possible. But I have to add that it's still not happening fast enough because we are in danger of crossing certain negative tipping points that could make it worse than we hoped it would ever be. I'm optimistic, but my optimism is based on the assumption that people are going to continue to build their enthusiasm and determination at the grassroots level all over the world. And that's why I have these trainings like the one that's unfolding here in Rio right now. And I know that there have been morally based challenges in our past where many of the advocates felt despair, but then when they kept at it and kept pushing hard, eventually we crossed the point where people realized, this is the right thing to do, and others joined, and the progress accelerated. I think we're very close to that positive tipping point where the climate is concerned, and this dramatic progress that you referred to is a sure sign of it. 93% of all the new electricity generation last year worldwide was renewable. That's incredible. The electric vehicles are really catching on, and in some countries are just really replacing the internal combustion engines. And I could go on with other examples, but I will just say I'm optimistic, very encouraged, but I want to make sure that we move faster still because the emissions are still going up, and that we have to bend that curve down.
Yeah, Mr. Gore, here in Brazil, and I think all over the world, especially in developing nations, adaptation is already an urgency. And we've been seeing what happened in the Amazon in the past years, in Rio Grande do Sul, but in other places as well. So adaptation is inseparable from the transition, right? And at the same time, some people, especially fossil fuel interests, they are still betting that we should not do mitigation and actually go just for adaptation, which doesn't make sense. So I wanted to ask you, how do we elevate adaptation globally as a priority in a way that doesn't look like a rendition, doesn't look as something that, we're giving up? How to do that?
Well, many years ago, my feeling was when I first started this battle 50 years ago, I thought that any time and energy spent on adaptation was taken away from what the top priority ought to be, and that is reducing the emissions and mitigating and preventing the crisis from getting worse. Now we have seen so much harm that's already been done. It's been obvious for quite a while that we have a moral obligation to help people adapt to the changes that they're going to have to live with anyway. So we have to do both. And yet it's a real danger still, especially now, to give anyone the impression that we can just eliminate all of our mitigation efforts because they're hard sometimes and then focus only on adaptation. And I think that it's tricky to deliver that message, but at the same time say, yes, we have to make adaptation a priority because people are suffering and they need the help. And there's an old saying, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can do two things simultaneously. And in many cases, mitigation and adaptation really do go hand in hand. So we have to do both. For me, the top priority must remain on mitigation, but I'm very strongly supportive of the adaptation measures that are necessary now.
And Mr. Gore, we're hearing many people saying it's too late for 1.5. And here in Brazil, we're even hearing some voices saying that 29 COPs did not deliver, that multilateralism is dead. So how can we restore faith in global cooperation, especially now in the lead to COP30?
Yeah, great question. And I'll take it in two parts. So first of all, I don't think the 1.5 goal is dead. It's certainly true that we have already passed it for periods of time and really almost the entire year in 2024. But the way the scientists measure that threshold is not in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It's over a 10-year period. And so we have not officially crossed that border. And we still do have the opportunity to accelerate the transition and stop temperatures from continuing to go up. And if we stay at true net zero for 30 years or more, then approximately half of the human-caused CO2 will fall back out of the atmosphere. I think it's important to keep that goal. I think it's really important to keep focusing on what the scientists have told us is the important threshold to stay below. And according to their definition, we haven't crossed it yet. So I hold on to that, and I think that's the responsible thing to do. But the way to make sure that we don't cross it permanently is by accelerating the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And we have a lot going for us because the technologies that enable us to make the transition are now fully mature. We have proven deployment models. They're cheaper and cleaner and better. They create 3 times as many jobs per real spent or per dollar spent. So obviously, we need to keep pushing and redouble our efforts, and I'm optimistic that we will succeed.
Mr. Gore, you are a great inspiration to us because we are living in these times where we see a lot of elder statesmen like yourselves giving up. And we see in you this courage, this energy. You are, gathering a lot of 1,000 Brazilians here today to just, talk about adaptation, to inspire change. And at the same time, Caroline and myself, we are in our 40s, and we have been working on climate policies and negotiations for half of our lives, right? And we see a lot of peers just giving up, checking out. And at the same time, like the younger generation, they look at us and they ask, what's going on? So I wanted to ask you first, how do you hold your resolve to keep in this fight, like fully? And secondly, what would you say to those that are ready to check out right now when we need them most?
Well, I would say don't do it. For me, it's easy to keep my energy up and my resolve strong because I've been working on this a long time and I've seen dramatic positive change. I know we can do this. There was an economist in the 20th century in the US named Rudy Dornbush who has a kind of an economics law named after him, and it goes like this. He said, things take longer to happen than you think they will. And then they happen faster than you thought they could. And I've seen that happen in my lifetime. I've seen it happen in technology. I've seen it happen in political movements as well. And I continue to hold out hope that we are very close to the inflection point where things begin to happen for the good faster than we thought was possible.
Great. One final question. What would you like to see coming out of COP30 this year here in Brazil?
Well, I'm very enthusiastic about the innovative new structure that Marina Silva has introduced, the global ethical stocktake, because we know from history that sometimes what we know to be right and the difference between right and wrong is out of step with what the prevailing laws and policies are. And that's when these great moral movements really gain a lot of momentum. And if you look back at the movement to end slavery, to give women the right to vote, more recently to have equality and freedom for the lesbian and gay communities, all of those challenges seemed at times to some people impossible, but they kept on fighting. And even though some of the strongest advocates were vulnerable to despair, when they kept on fighting, as soon as the central issue was revealed as a choice between right and wrong, then because of who we are as human beings at a deep level, the outcome became foreordained. I think we're very close to that point where the climate crisis is concerned. You know, the very fact that the scientists predicted accurately decades ago the kinds of climate catastrophes that are happening on a regular basis now should cause us to pay more attention to what they're warning us about today would happen if we don't act. And I think that we are made up in a very complicated way as human beings, and people are vulnerable to greed and short-sightedness and all of that. We know that. But we also have the capacity to transcend those limitations. And when we have a very clear view of a stark choice between a hard right and an easy wrong, we have the capacity to choose the right and to pursue it and to be dedicated and fearless to really achieve it. That's my goal. I see people every single day who share that goal and who share the conviction that I have. And I'm so happy that you two are doing this podcast and on a regular basis all the way through to COP30. And you guys are an example of exactly what I'm talking about. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. We have a tradition in this podcast, which is to, well, give a small token of appreciation to our guests. And it's sort of a motto because Las Niñas comes from La Niña, which is this cooling effect. So we want to make make Earth cool again.
Yeah,
you know?
I usually don't put hats on, but I'm going to give you a cameo here. And I'm going to take this back home and wear it on my farm in Tennessee.
Amazing.
I think it's a really beautiful hat, and I love the message, make Earth cool again. It's a nice contrast to some other message I hear sometimes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Obrigado.
It was a pleasure. Obrigada.
Thank you.
Então, é isso, pessoal. Hoje a gente não tem nosso habitual refresco da semana, mas eu acho que todos vocês devem ter se sentido refrescados com essa conversa cheia de esperança do Gore. Semana que vem a gente volta com o nosso bloco querido de volta. Esse foi mais um Las Niñas. Se você curtiu, compartilha esse episódio nas suas redes, no Zap, com quem precisa entender o que está pegando no mundo da crise climática. Deixa seus comentários no Spotify, no YouTube, no Apple Podcasts, onde for que você escute seu podcast. A gente, como sempre, gosta muito de ouvir feedbacks de vocês. E semana que vem tem mais. Até lá!